Most people enjoy hearing the stories of cryptid sightings and encounters. Cryptids are creatures, such as Bigfoot, lake monsters, and even mythical beasts like dragons, griffins, or yes, mermaids. Lake monsters are infamous in most lakes across America. They've been known to terrorize whole towns and villages into ultimately changing the way of daily life and travel, steering clear of the waters or others such as Champy, who bring in tourists to want a chance of fame and fortune. There are certain places that you can buy Bigfoot magnets and keychains, and also postcards of the Jersey Devil. These, my friends, are the same type of people who enjoy tours of haunted houses and ghost walks, then return to their cozy homes and it's all over. But for some of us, it's a lifestyle. We don't talk about it. Well, we respect our monsters, and we have seen what can happen if someone does try to break the silence. I can tell you that my name is kind of under wraps, and even where I live, I'd prefer to keep that anonymous too. Just know that it is one of the northern states in the US. You will likely never have heard of our cryptid. There's a good reason for it. We don't talk about her. Yes, that's right, her. While most of these tales seem to involve creatures with no discernible gender, or people assume that they're male due to perhaps stature, ours is very much feminine. I remember the first time I heard whispers in the playground during recess about the witch in the woods and the lady in the lake. Some of the kids have heard stories from older siblings, and of course, there was arguments over who was right. Of course, it was neither of them. Our cryptid isn't a witch, and although I consider her female, she's not actually a lady, and she resides in the mountains. Only a few people have ever actually seen her, and those sightings are far and few between these days. Much like the old stories of mermaids and sirens, she appears as great beauty to start with, but soon, much like a succubus, reveals her true form. Those who have lived to tell, she doesn't apparently spare everyone, which is why hiking in these particular areas are forbidden. Say she is around 8 feet tall, practically skin and bone. What skin is left is gray and rotting, hanging off her bones, exposing her ribcage and spinal column. Due to her height, her limbs are extended, and her long fingers can rip a man in half. Despite the state of her skin, her hair is said to be wispy black and reaches long down, an almost skeletal-like face. The skin that remains is pulled tightly across all of her grotesque features, making her eyes stick out and displaying sharp teeth like fangs. And if all of that alone wasn't enough to frighten you, she also is said to have large, leathery black wings. She keeps those tucked behind her. If she opens them, run. Yet, despite all of this, her utter terrifying appearance, she leaves us alone. She never does venture down into our town, and we have been able to keep up on the bears and wolves in the caves to deter any strangers from deciding to take a hike up there. Some have said that she is a descendant of the Fae. Others may be a banshee. Look, whatever she is, I don't care. She seems fine, so as long as we leave her alone. Most of us believe her to be a guardian of sorts. We've had more than our fair share of good luck and fortune, minor miracles and the like. If somebody wins a raffle or gets all the clear on a medical exam, they give a nod to the mountain. But as I said, we have rules to follow. It hasn't happened for a while, but back, just before I was born, I guess there was a man who had tried to talk to a reporter about her from the city. I guess he somehow managed to collect various stories from her around town, even made a sketch, and plotted out some of her sightings on a map. He loaded it all into his vehicle and headed off to the city where he was due to meet the reporter. I guess he was somehow involved in a head-on collision, dying at the scene. The car bursting into flame with nothing left. 2 days prior, his wife had died of a heart attack. She was a gym teacher, 35 years old, very fit and healthy. Maybe these were coincidences, but our town doesn't believe that. I feel there's some sort of supernatural blanket laying on top of anybody who wants to investigate this further. We don't talk about our monster, and everything is fine. You won't find postcards or bumper stickers in our gas stations. If a stranger comes to town and asks about sightings of something strange in the mountain, we tell them about the wolves, the bears, the cougars, you know. Sure, we may even throw Bigfoot a bone here and there. Because the sheer drops and the dangerous caves, well, yeah. There is nothing unusual or unexplained in our mountains, we say. They are closed off. Too dangerous. You don't want to encounter an angry bear, right? Or trip over an unseen ledge, plummeting to your death, do you? I mean, it usually works that way, right? Unless somebody thinks they're brave enough to be a hero. They generally don't come back. We know what's happened. We did try to warn them. Of course, it does make me wonder. If we are one small town with a very big kept secret, how many others are there out there? How many more of these things are watching over people, keeping the peace unless spoken about? You think we're an exclusive instance? No. I had heard from many other stories. I guess there are small villages in Brazil and South America that face a very similar situation. Everybody knows about it, but they don't really mention it to outsiders. Except their beings they face are harpies, or female-like entities. I don't know if that's our case or how that works, but it's strange. And being a cryptid paranormal investigator, I feel that I should be finding these things out. Anyway, let's keep communication open, and I'll let you know if I find out anything else. As always, take care. This is my story. I get it, it's not the best, but I have attempted to tell it as close to accurately as I can remember. My name is Lauren Chambers. Obviously, it's not my real name, but that's what I'll go by for this story. This happened when I was 19. The beginning of this tale begins with a deceptively normal day in June at about 7 a.m. while walking my dog. At the time, I still lived at home with mom and dad, taking a year off before college, and one thing they asked for help with alongside regular chores was to walk the dog. Even though that meant getting up early, it was fine. And to be honest, especially during the summer, it was better to wake up before the sun got too hot, and I enjoyed the fresh air and exercise. You see, Duke was a yellow lab, and still full of life, enjoying his long runs and playing catch with a nasty old tennis ball that he loved. We usually always took a particular route through the woods behind the house, almost exactly an hour every day, and arriving home to a nice hot cup of coffee, as my parents were getting ready, being busy for work. Except on that specific day, the ball had decided to land way further away than usual, get caught by a gust of wind, and end up sailing down the stream. I would bet for any other pet owner, this wouldn't have been an issue. You could probably just fool your dog with another ball, right? Not our dog Duke. He'd had that ball for ages, and he would not stop barking and howling at me until I made the effort to try and fetch it out, which was how we ended up further into the trees and way down past the water than we'd ever been. Duke, of course, was having the time of his life. So many new smells and new trees for him to pee on. And for a short time, even I thought it might have been a blessing in disguise that we somehow ended up in this new, undiscovered part by us. There were far more trees on this side of the water, and even though dawn had been gone and the sun should have been shining through, I noticed it was much darker due to the sheer density of all the branches, leaves, and foliage. It was never exactly partly central in there. We were lucky if we saw one other crazy person with their dog, or occasionally a morning jog. But It seemed even less likely that we would come across any living creature, let alone a human. Duke was busy rolling in something I probably didn't even want to know about, when all of a sudden he stops. At first, it seemed comical. He was just laying there on his back with his legs up in the air, looking like a beetle that had gotten stuck. Then, his demeanor changes instantly. He starts whining. I thought maybe he was hurt. He had rolled on a porcupine maybe or something. So, as I begin going over towards him, he suddenly jumps up, running back at me, barking and growling. Looking back, I realized he was trying to warn me. At the time, though, I was very confused and off-put by this behavior. Then, I heard another growl, only I was looking right at Duke, and I knew it wasn't him making the sound. My first thought was that maybe there was another dog out there, and of course this dog wasn't happy that we had found his secret space, or, something along those lines. So I quickly scanned all around, and I even called out. I had to see who was there. No answer, obviously. Just another louder and closer growl. I then noticed what we must be close to is the far end of the woodland, before it turns into a massive cavern system, eventually leading off to a huge lake, which actually used to be a giant quarry and had fueled many campfires' scary stories over the years. I think mainly about ghosts and other spooky noises you could hear there late at night. I know. Being in high school and going through campfires, I'd heard all about it. Stories that'll make your eyes roll from being so cheesy. But now, that was becoming a reality. Screams from the workmen who lost their lives filling it in. The usual kind of tales. All sorts of things were going through my mind. It can't be a ghost. This isn't nighttime. It can't be. I'm not close enough to the water. All sorts of crazy stuff, and as I realized how hard my heart was thumping, I should have just run. I would have if Duke wouldn't have just gotten up and followed me. But he decided too that he was scared, and he would be all submissive and roll over on his back again, showing his belly to the growler, showing that he was a coward. And that's when everything changed. We saw it. It crawled out of the mouth of one of the cavern openings. It didn't appear much bigger than Duke, but it was crouched over, spine all bent, so maybe it would have been taller had it stood up. It was completely white, blindingly so, like fresh snow. I didn't notice a proper face, just sort of a hole. It wasn't human-like, but it had human features, like a human body, crouched over kind of crab-walking. It seemed to have limbs, but whether they were separate arms and legs or legs at all, I didn't hang around to investigate any further. It began to make this clicking noise. Well, its head was kind of pointed too, and again, no eyes. That was enough. Me and Duke bolted. We ran as fast as we could back through the trees and over the water. We didn't stop at all, not even to take a breather, until we got back home. Duke shot into his kennel, refusing to come out until later. I had to bribe him. For a few days, I had to literally drag him into the forest. Even though we were even barely made it past a yard, we never took the ball back again, just in case. Duke passed while I was at college, unfortunately, and I strongly advised my parents don't get another dog. I never told them or anybody else what we saw. But I know whenever I hear somebody hearing a ghost when they've been down to the lake, it isn't a ghost. I believe it's something far, far worse. The only thing I could think of is maybe I had a sighting of a crawler. It's the only thing that would make sense. What's your opinion?